I'm going to combine Day 8 and Day 9 into the same video. Because they're both about, favorite character, one you have played and one you haven't played. When it comes to the favorite character that I have played, I think back on some of the characters that I've played for the longest time. And again, this is just D&D, because I've had some good characters in other game systems. Worf Nichiobi, my very first official D&D character, played him for quite a while, had tons of fun playing as Worf. Worf was someone where, and this 100% true, if I tried to do things intelligently, they never worked out. But if I was just balls to the wall crazy with him, everything just turned up Millhouse. We were fighting a Cyclops, and I have throwing axes. And I think to myself, oh, this thing has one eye. Let's do a called shot with my throwing axe to his eye. Miss, critical miss, critical miss. Well, that plan didn't work. I think I could have thrown 2 around at this when I was playing this game. So that was just 2 rounds. I tried it, twice. Didn't work. So then I just pulled out my battle axe and ran into battle, and I crit it twice in a row. I know that I had 2 critical misses on the throws to begin with, because one axe went backwards and had a chance of hitting the party behind me. And the other one I almost hit myself when I threw it. But then I totally got 2 critical hits within the first couple rounds of combat when I said screw it and just started whacking him with the axe. That's just the most blatant example, but there were several examples where Worf was not one for careful planning, because nothing worked out when he planned it. So if he just drew his axe and charged into battle, everything was perfect. I think about Cervantes Angel Ordóñez, my dual-wielding fighter character. I really enjoyed Cervantes. But I hated the game I was playing him in. My brother and I were... this was the first time we had kind of joined a gaming group outside of just our friends from school. And we would drive over to this guy's house and play D&D. And this was the guy that ruined DM Fiat for me. I do not like playing in games where the DM changes the rules, unless he tells me all of the rules changes up front. Because this guy, we would have a game, a combat, and I took, for example, well, we'll start with my brother since it happened to him first. He took mounted combat. You go to mounted combat in 3rd edition, you try to hit the mount, and mounted combat allows you to make a ride check and substitute your skill check for the mount's armor class. And my brother was a paladin, and we were 5th or 6th level, and he had a really high ride check. So the DM was trying to kill his mount, and the ride check, very first time ever, it's like, okay, I'm going to use my mounted combat feat. Rolls his ride check, substitutes for the armor class, the attack misses. The DM says, I don't like that, we're going to change how that works. And he made it specifically much worse, such that if you passed the ride check, you got maybe a +2 to armor class or something ridiculous like that. I think that was at 5th level, because my brother was a paladin, and at 5th level is when you get your warhorse. So at 6th level, I took improved trip. And that was when I finally tracked down the guy who had fought and killed part of my family. And I was going to duel him one-on-one. And I had improved trip, so I went to trip him in battle. And, of course, it was too easy, and the DM said, no, I don't like that. So he changed the rules right then and there and made it so that it didn't work. Absolutely hate that kind of crap in a game. You can't change rules in the middle of a game like that, especially when every time he changed the rules, it was specifically to make what we were doing worse. So one of the things that I really loved about 3rd edition was, prior to this guy, all of the rules were spelled out. And as I mentioned in another video, I have a very good memory, so I remember all of the rules pretty well. So it's one thing if you're the DM and you can't remember all the rules, because I realize most people can't remember all of those rules. And for the ease of play, you quickly come up with a way to do it. For example, the grapple rules. The grapple rules, no matter what edition of D&D you're playing, are terrible. They're very complex. And so I've seen a lot of people, if you try to grapple, they just come up with a quick system right then and there to handle it, rather than having to read through the paragraphs and paragraphs in the book to figure out how it works. That's one thing. It's another thing entirely when you know how grapple works, but because your guy got grappled, you decide, no, that's not good enough. We're going to change how the rules work retroactively. So, no, he's not grappled. Go ahead and now you're going to roll this check instead. Oh, nah, you failed. So, yeah, that's a pain in the butt. But I really did like Cervantes, and he exists in my world still. Mikhail was an awesome character to play. But in play, in the first couple adventures, he had terrible die rolls. So he wanted to be a badass, but he couldn't. That's part of his character. He wants to succeed and show off and prove that he's good enough, and he constantly fails at it, which was self-esteem issues for such a long time for him. I did technically play Strovil, and this is probably one of my favorite characters I haven't played. We sat down in 2nd edition, and we had pre-generated characters. Strovil is my favorite character that someone else created for me. So it was my friend Chuck. He was DM. He created the characters. We sat down. I got the wizard. He was a wild mage, which means when he cast certain spells, there was a chance that you could roll on this random table to determine what effect it had. And actually, there's a 1st level spell in 2nd edition that's exactly what it does. The entire purpose of the spell is it lets you roll on the wild surge table. I'm a big fan of wild magic. We played that one night, one game, and everybody in the party died except Strovil. There were only 3 of us. There was a gnome fighter, my human wizard, and I don't remember what the cleric... I don't remember if the 3rd person was a cleric or a rogue. But we were exploring some tunnels. We got hit. We encountered some goblins, and everybody rolled poorly on the player side and excellently on the DM side. So we were thinking we could take on these 6 goblins, and the fighter went down pretty quick. I actually think the other character went down first, and the fighter went down second. But all that was left was Strovil. I think at this time there were still 4 goblins left, and we were backed into a corner. There was nowhere for Strovil to run away. So I asked the DM, I was out of spells by this time, and so I said, can I use my quarterstaff and attack with both ends? Can I get like 2 attacks off? He says, yeah, but you're going to be at a penalty. I said, that's fine. I then proceeded to roll the 4 best rolls ever that night, and in 2 quick rounds, maybe 3 rounds of combat, I killed the other 4 goblins single-handedly. And then managed to pick... Because our fighter was a gnome, fortunately he was lighter, so I could pick him up and drag the other character back to town, and that was the end of the adventure. That was all that Strovil ever did in-game. But after that, Strovil has been developed immensely. I played him on a number of play-by-post freeform role-playing games. There was a whole community called Venura back in the day. It doesn't exist anymore. But it was a very awesome message board system that was kind of created specifically for people to do role-playing. And everybody that played there was freeform. There was no dice rolling, no D&D kind of stuff, no rules kind of set up. And so I played as Strovil on a number of different boards as a wizard, and he was awesome. But he's kind of one that I've never been able to get back into a real D&D game. Every time I've started playing as Strovil, and usually it's been like an online play-by-post, this time actual D&D RPG, like on Rpole, or I think the other website was D&D Games Online, something like that. The game has died like immediately. So he's like the death curse for games. Even in the one time I actually played him, the game ended immediately. It ended after that first adventure. not even the first whole adventure. It was kind of like 3 or 4 rooms of the dungeon. So he's one of my favorite characters I haven't played. Let me think if there's anyone else. I really liked playing Knuckles as far as favorite characters I have played. I talked about him a little bit before. And I really liked playing Dr. Facilier, based entirely on the villain from The Princess and the Frog. He was an 8th level bard who was the character that replaced Knuckles when Knuckles died to a demon. And he's the one who really opened my eyes up to how awesome bards are in Pathfinder. And he focused and he's also the reason why I started really go. Well, he was a further reason. I might have talked about Knuckles and the mechanics for Knuckles, but if I hadn't, really quickly, Knuckles, with the abilities he has from Pathfinder as a rogue, when he sneaks attack people, he can make them shaken or frightened. And there's a rogue archetype called Thug that can cause people you hit to become sickened. Now, shaken/panicked stacks with the penalty from sickened, so you give this guy a lot of penalties to attacks and armor class and saves and what have you. So there was a little bit of the debuff in that. And then when I got to Facilier, I went whole hog on the debuffs, and I had a lot of fun playing him. He was neutral, tending towards evil, because he's got friends on the other side. And he was a blast. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play him for very long. However, I did get to play him for several weeks, so I can't count him as much as Strovil as my favorite character that I haven't played. Vorun the Viking was one originally created as a wrestler in a play-by-post freeform wrestling league. He was one of the first additions I did to the Runes of Trocare. If you've watched any of the Runes of Trocare videos, I'm pretty sure I explained that there's a bandit, a group of bandits that lives in part of the runes. They're led by a man named Kellum. And when I first created it, I had this Kellum and his band of guys, and I said, that's kind of cool, but they're all just... There's no, like, shock trooper type guy. I need someone who's going to go in there and just start beating the crap out of things. And so I added a small contingent of Viking berserkers, led by Vorun, who wields a battle axe and a short sword, and is just like a whirling whirlwind of death, whirling twice. I had originally created Vorun as a character, so after the wrestling, I had created him in the game with the intention of playing him, and then subsequently added him as a faction with the bandits in the Runes of Trocare. And I thought that would be kind of cool, because the first couple times the player characters exploring the runes encountered the bandits, it would just be these low-level warrior being the 3rd edition NPC class guys. You know, they'd have some crossbows and stuff, but if they started really putting a thorn in the bandit's side, well, then suddenly they'd find themselves being kind of hunted down by Deacon, who was a ranger scout, and Vorun and his berserkers, which would just be warriors, but they would have the ability to rage, but it would be a half rage, so just like +1 to it, +2 to strength and con, which is +1 to attack, damage, and hit points. But, you know, it'd be fun. So he's one of the guys that I haven't played and haven't explored very much. I really did like playing Yakwashokwati, a tiefling barbarian, who was essentially the time that I got to play Vorun, now that I think about it. He had a lot of classes. He took Barbarian for the Rage. He took Ranger for the 2-weapon fighting. I believe he was also a first-level Rogue. And I played him in an online play-by-post game, but there were dice rolls and everything, so it counts. And there was another character who was playing an evil wizard or sorcerer or something like that, and I became like his bodyguard. He had grand plans and things to do, so I was cool with that, and I just followed him around and killed stuff for him. And nobody liked my name, because it was... at the time I was reading about Aztec mythology, and so I wanted a very Aztec-sounding name for my guy, so I called him Yaquilxochtli. And nobody liked it, so they just called him Yak. And I said, all right, call him Yak. And that's Yak, Y-A-C, even though it sounds like Y-A-K. He was fun. I've played so many characters, trying to pick a favorite one. And coming down to what actually happened in game, I would probably say that Worf was my favorite character of all time. Oh, no, take it back. I take it back. Worf is up there. Worf is top 3. My absolute favorite character of all time is Candlejack. Who I played. He's a 4th edition tactical warlord. And I played him for 2 years, all through Living Forgotten Realms. And in addition to having just a blast playing him at the table, I also, like most of my characters, wrote up extensive backstory. But the cool thing about him, the thing that I enjoyed the most, was his backstory just totally tied into the Living Forgotten Realms meta game. What happens in Living Forgotten Realms, when you finish an adventure, you get paid X amount of gold. It's set in stone, and depending on the tier of the adventure, you get the same amount of gold. So it doesn't matter which tier 1 adventure you play, you got, I'm going to make up a number, 53 gold pieces per character. Or you could play up, which meant that it was more difficult, but it meant you got more experience and more gold. And let's just say you got 70 gold if you played up. So if we were playing an adventure, they always have it where you start off and you're talking to someone trying to figure out, what you're going to do in this adventure. They're kind of hiring you to go somewhere and kill stuff. And because Candlejack was the founder, proprietor, and chief warlord of the Candlejack Mercenary Adventuring Company, and he would, at the beginning of the game, deputize the other people sitting at the table into Candlejack's Mercenary Adventuring Company, and he would gladly negotiate with whoever was trying to hire them. And he says, we will charge you a standard fee of 53 gold pieces per mercenary you hire. And he'd look around and he's like, all right, so there's 6 people at that table, so that's going to be 318 gold pieces total for the job. Or if there were, we were playing up, that's 420 gold pieces for the job. And he would just negotiate it, and it fit with the way that it was working out for Living Forgotten Realms. It was a ton of fun because, in a way, I was making fun of the system that they have there. And because everybody got the reward, at the end of the adventure, you couldn't claim to not have been deputized, because clearly Candlejack negotiated for a standard fee for every member of the Candlejack Mercenary Adventuring Company, and if you received the fee, then you must have been a member of the Candlejack Mercenary Adventuring Company. And there were a couple people I played with so often that they were made not honorary members, but they were just full members automatically. And I came up with a whole organizational structure. One of the things about 4th edition was it wanted to create the setting was supposed to be points of light in a world of darkness. And Candlejack Mercenary Adventuring Company's motto was a point of light in a world of darkness. And everything just tied together. It's essentially one big, I don't want to call it a parody, but it was totally making fun of the whole thing the entire time, and it was a blast. And so I would say probably of everything, every character I've ever played, every game I've ever played, weird enough, 4th edition Candlejack Tactical Warlord is probably the top. I'd also put Candlejack ahead of Wick. Wick was the second Tactical Warlord I played, and he was totally enamored with Candlejack. Not in a romantic way, but in a heroic kind of way. He wanted to be Candlejack's right-hand man, second in command. The hilarious thing was he goes around throughout all the adventures I played as Wick. He did everything Candlejack did and talked about how great of a hero Candlejack was. And he had never met Candlejack, technically. He saw Candlejack. He's seen him, but he never actually met him or talked to him or anything. And he was doing all of this and creating all these deputies in the Mercenary Adventuring Company and that without Candlejack knowing he even existed. Candlejack had never actually seen Wick. Wick saw Candlejack. That was a ton of fun, too. But I think Candlejack was probably a little bit more fun to play. Okay, I think that's it. This will count as 2 days worth of videos. Tomorrow I leave for Denver. So these other videos I will have to make up as I go. I'll have to make up for them. So until next time, bye bye.